All right, we've got the Stephon Diggs revenge game here in Week 5. Personal narratives aside, this is also the first matchup between these AFC East rivals this season. Can the Patriots knock Buffalo from their perch atop the division, or will Buffalo remain victorious? We'll see in the simulation, but first, let's get behind the bar and make our drink a Snowstorm.
Finally, I get a Patriots primetime game. The first of 3 this season, actually, so I've got 2 more opportunities to share fun insights into the corner of the US where I grew up. As I mentioned back in the Lions video in Week 3, I was born in Michigan, but when I was 2 years old, my whole family moved to Rhode Island, and I did my whole K through 12 there. Oh, and Bills fans, welcome back. This is your 3rd of 5 primetime games this season, and while I still do technically have drinks for all of your games at this point, some of them do definitely feel like a stretch per usual. And there's perhaps no better segue into Buffalo's representative this week than that, the Blizzard. Now, the Blizzard is a very simple cocktail consisting of bourbon, cranberry juice, lemon juice, and simple syrup, and my rationale for picking it as Buffalo's representative is equally simple. Number 1, the drink's called the Blizzard, and Buffalo is infamous for its crazy snowstorms that it gets due to all that lake effect coming off Lake Erie. And 2, it means I get to use my Buffalo Trace again. I highly doubt this drink has any actual connection to Buffalo itself, though sadly in my research I was unable to really find anything about the origin of this cocktail. As far as I could track down, it comes from Stuart Walton's Ultimate Book of Cocktails, which was available on Amazon, but I was not about to spend the money on. See, cocktail books fall into one of 3 categories, only 2 of which are worth buying in my opinion, and now that I think about it, this also kind of extends to cookbooks as well. So the first type of book is what I call research books, like Dave Arnold's Liquid Intelligence or Dave Wondrich's Imbibe. These are books where the author has done a great deal of study and then compiled all of their knowledge, all of those findings into a book. So for Liquid Intelligence, that's, the science of cocktails, things like acid percentages, sugar percentages, dilution times, all that. And for Imbibe, it's much more about sort of the history of cocktails, where they came from, who created them, all of that good stuff. One of my favorite cookbooks, Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat, is kind of like a research book for cooking, right? It's all about breaking down cooking into the science of, salt, fat, acid, heat, and how you combine those 4 components. The second category of books are things like Death & Co.'s recipe book. These are books where, it's a well-known individual or group, and it's, a compilation of all of their recipes, and ideally not just the recipes, but also things like, bits of knowledge they've picked up, industry stories, things like that. For the cookbook side of things, these are stuff like, your Gordon Ramsay cookbooks, really basically any of the sort of celebrity chefs who have, a well-earned reputation for making good food. The third category is the one that I think Stuart's book falls into, and no shade to Stuart, but I call these recipe slop books. You can find these for cookbooks as well as for cocktails. Essentially, it's where someone with little to no name recognition has compiled as many recipes as possible in order to slap an impressive sounding number on the front that'll sell books. Are the recipes inside any good? I don't know, with a number like over 600 fantastic drinks, at least some of them, statistically speaking, have to be good. Look, I think these books have a place, but they're kind of like the bootleg 50-in-1 games that you find at Five Below, right? Their real purpose is just to grab the attention of somebody who isn't really familiar with this topic and get them to go, oh, my nephew, grandson, insert relationship here, likes cocktails. Surely they'll like 600 of them. And so they buy it for you, they give it to you as, a birthday gift or a Christmas present. You go, oh, thank you so much. And then you immediately put it on your shelf where it sits and gathers dust because nothing in there is actually worth reading through. Okay, that was a weird and strangely intense tangent, but to get back on track, let's move on to New England's representative, a personal favorite of some of my family, the Dark and Stormy. Now, I've known about the Dark and Stormy for pretty much as long as I've known what alcohol is, hell, maybe even earlier. Up at my grandparents' house in Maine, 5 o'clock rolls around, my grandpa asks my dad, hey, I'm making a Dark and Stormy, you want me to make you one? Gin and tonics were the other common drink, but those just didn't sound as cool, so they didn't catch my attention in the same way. I am curious though, before I get into the details of this drink, Is it a well-known drink to anybody else? Like, is this just a New England thing? Is it like a nationally known thing? Is it just a me thing? Let me know down in the comments. Anyways, the Dark and Stormy is Gosling's black rum, lime juice, and ginger beer, which, if you remember back to the Week 3 Kansas City video, technically makes this a Gosling's Black Seal Buck, though literally nobody calls it that. Now, a rum buck has probably existed in some form since at least the mid-1800s, as sailors would have been mixing rum with ginger and various sort of concoctions, but a Dark and Stormy is not just any rum buck. No, see, in 1991, Gosling's actually trademarked the name Dark and Stormy, which means if you want to call your drink a Dark and Stormy, you have to make it using Gosling's Black Seal rum. They say the drink was created in Bermuda just after World War I, which seems really feasible to me, but I don't have any concrete evidence to actually back that claim up. Funnily enough, despite having a literal handle of Gosling's Black Seal rum, I will not be using it in our mashup for this game, the Snowstorm. Now, this cocktail was uniquely difficult for me to come up with. Usually when I'm having trouble coming up with a drink for a matchup, the problem is either I can't find a drink for one team, or the drinks that I have for those two teams just don't seem to fit together in any sort of rational or, good way. But the problem with this drink was that the inspirations for the two teams actually overlapped too much. So initially for the New England representative, I wanted to do the Cape Codder, which is more commonly known as a vodka cran. But the problem is combining, a vodka cran with Buffalo Trace bourbon would just create the blizzard. So eventually, after doing a bunch of different combinations, I finally found one that I was happy with, Blizzard and Dark and Stormy, and then named it after a fitting combination of the two, the Snowstorm. So all of that out of our way, the spec for this drink is going to be 2 ounces of bourbon. Of course, we are using our Buffalo Trace because, I gotta milk every bit of connection to Buffalo that I can get, because Buffalo, you're not giving me a lot to work with here. I'm doing my best. I have had someone suggest hot sauce, which would be interesting, but not great for the taste buds, I don't think. 1.5 ounces of cranberry juice. So for this one, ideally you are going to want to use unsweetened cranberry juice. The most common thing that you'll find in the store is cranberry cocktail, which is only actually like 25% cranberry juice, and the rest of it is basically sugar water that's been added to make it more palatable. So ideally, you're using 100% cranberry juice because we really want that sharpness, that tartness that's going to come from that. 1/2 ounce of lime juice. Again, adding a bit more acid, a bit more bite. And then we are going to shake those all up. There we go. If you've noticed, my break isn't quite as clean as it normally is. That's because I ate shit and scraped up my palms, so I can't quite palm strike this thing like I would normally want to. Anyways, strain that lovely color into our highball glass. And then, you can't have a Dark and Stormy inspiration and not use ginger beer. We are going to top that off with our can of ginger beer. So let's see, about 6 ounces, give or take. You don't gotta be precise on how much ginger beer you're topping it off with. And that's really funny because that looks so much like the clover water. That's actually kind of insane how much that looks like the clover water. Okay. Anyways, I'm gonna try it with a straw. Let's see how it tastes. Ooh. Okay. Oh, wow. There's a lot more evolution to that than I expected. Definitely the ginger from the ginger beer is what gets you first. That is definitely the main note. But the cranberry and the bourbon play off each other and make their presence known in this drink way more than I was expecting. I was like, I don't know if you saw it in my facial expressions when I took that first sip. I was kind of worried because I'm like, I'm just getting ginger. This is kind of boring. But then the ginger faded out, and it was like this weird sort of like cranberry bourbon like swirl that really caught me by surprise in a really pleasant way. Ooh. Wow, it's not too sweet, right? We really don't have any sugar in here. You know, we've got a little bit of natural sugar from the cranberry juice. Ginger beer is pretty bone dry, so we're not really getting any sugar from that. Lime juice technically has a little bit of sugar in it, but it's really small there. Obviously, bourbon isn't a particularly, you know, sweet spirit. It's not like a, you know, flavored rum. But somehow this drink reads as quite sweet. Not in a cloying way, not in a bad way. But like you'd think this drink would be like really bone dry and sort of like cutting. But it's got a lot of sort of a juiciness to it, for lack of a better word. Wow. Damn. Absolutely better than the sum of its parts. Wow, that was... This is honestly like... This is a strong contender for sort of like... I was gonna say most improved drink, but like, I'm not actually improving the drink. But you know, in terms of like the gap between where my expectations were for this drink and how it actually turned out, I am blown out of the water. This is really surprisingly good. Yeah, you're still getting the tartness from the cranberry. Like it's not, you know, that hasn't gone away, but it has been mellowed out without being like tamped down. Like it's still all of that tart cranberry flavor, but just not like biting you in the same way that it normally would. Wow. Interesting. All right. Well, this has certainly been an interesting cocktail. Hopefully we get an interesting matchup in the simulation.
All right, top of the AFC East versus the closest thing they have to a competitor. Bills get the ball first at their own 25-yard line. On their opening drive, Bills in New England territory, Josh Allen tries to scramble, but the Patriots' zone defense stops him short of the line of scrimmage, bringing up 4th down and leading Buffalo to settle for a field goal. The Patriots' first possession ends in a similar manner, as May is stopped on a 3rd down scramble, setting up a 4th and inches. The Patriots go for it, however, and Matt Milano in the backfield buys just enough time for the Bills to rally and stop Stevenson short of the 1st down. After that dramatic start, both teams just trade punts for a bit before May dodges pressure in the pocket, hitting Diggs deep in the back corner of the end zone for the game's first touchdown. At the 2-minute warning, the Bills answer right back, hitting Dalton Kincaid on a shallow cross, who muscles it in for a 20-yard touchdown. Now, both offenses are clicking though, and the Pats' 2-minute drill takes them to the 4-yard line. Bills inexplicably only rush 3, and May just takes it right in for the touchdown. In a rare bit of good situational football from the Madden AI, 2 plays puts the Bills at New England's 44-yard line, where they attempt the 59-yard field goal as time expires in the half. Sadly for Buffalo, it sails wide right, so the score remains 14-10 at the half. Almost as if they were fueled by that miss, though, the Buffalo offense comes out hot in the second half, as James Cook gets some great blocking, makes not 1, but 2 defenders miss, and then takes this in for a 41-yard rushing TD. Meanwhile, May eats a sack, setting up a 3rd and 20 from the 41-yard line, but he hangs in the pocket and delivers another classic Madden jump ball back corner TD to put the Pats back up 21-17. After a strong drive from the Bills, they're facing a 4th and goal from the 3-yard line with 4 minutes left, but never fear, Josh is here as he scampers this one in to retake the lead. Drake May attempts to respond, trying to put together a game-winning drive, but a sack on 2nd down makes this a 3rd and 18, which an incompletion bumps to 4th and 18. And here we see some of the worst decision-making yet from the Madden AI, as May checks the ball down and Stevenson just runs out of bounds, easily 15 yards from the 1st down marker. From there, Buffalo would mostly just burn clock. However, some unfortunate play calls and an injury timeout results in them kicking a field goal from New England's 7 to make it a 6-point lead with about 1 minute left on the clock. However, the Madden AI strikes again as May throws it to a receiver in the middle of the field with no timeouts, and time expires, letting Buffalo walk away from this one with a 27-21 win. A funny coincidence I realized while researching this matchup: a 27-21 Buffalo victory would be the exact same result as when these two teams played each other on New Year's Eve 2023. So needless to say, there's good historical evidence supporting this as a likely outcome. Now, in May's defense, this is only his second season in the league, and he hasn't exactly had a star-studded group of playmakers to throw the ball to, but this would be his first ever 300-plus yard game. 24 completions is pretty on par for his average so far this season, but the improved yards per catch bumps him over the 300 mark. As for Josh, pretty underwhelming through the air, falling short of 200 yards, but hyper efficient, with only one incompletion. One of Buffalo's keys to winning this game was absolutely dominating the ground game. James Cook had a great game, 17 carries for 100 yards on the dot, and 1 touchdown for good measure. Josh Allen also did his part, adding on 9 rushes for 40 yards and a TD. Meanwhile, the Patriots couldn't really get anything going. May had that touchdown scramble, but Ramondre only managed 34 yards on 9 carries, which sadly is nothing new for this New England team. Bills dominated the ground, but the Patriots controlled the skies, with the ball being distributed very evenly among their pass catchers. Boudy and Diggs both had big games, hauling in a touchdown apiece, in addition to 103 and 85 yards respectively. In fact, 4 Patriots pass catchers had more receptions than Buffalo's leading receiver. The Bills did also do a really good job at spreading the ball around though, getting 6 players a reception, including their 3rd-string tight end, Jackson Hawes. As the Monte Carlo sim tends to do, it stole some of those rushing yards away from Josh Allen, though in exchange it boosted his passing yards just barely above 200. It predicts a less remarkable, though still respectable 66 yards from James Cook. It also sees Travion Henderson emerge as the Patriots' lead back, toting the rock for about 68 yards. That increased rushing proficiency comes at a cost for the receivers, as none average above 40 yards in the Monte Carlo sim. Now, looking at the score distribution for the Monte Carlo sim, the most common outcome is a 14-14 tie. However, the second most common outcome is a 21-14 Buffalo victory. Indeed, the simulation generally favors the Bills, seeing them stay atop their division with a final score of 18-16. Do you agree with the simulations, or do you envision a different future? I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts down in the comments. As a reminder, our drink for this matchup is the juicy Snowstorm with plenty of ginger bite. If you make it, please let me know what you think, and I'd love to hear your suggestions for what drink should be your team's representative. Stay curious, stay thirsty, and I'll see you in the next one.